Good
Uh,
morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator Cruz.
I'm happy to be here. How is everyone?
Well, I'm doing great, and I hope our listeners are doing great. And we're going to get an update from the Florida legislature today from you.
Okay.
And so first, maybe I should just ask you, what do you think so far? What have you found from the Florida legislature? What's been the biggest surprises, or maybe the biggest things that we might have anticipated and have happened?
Well, no real surprises. Most of what we're seeing was fully anticipated, and that is that those in charge uh, get to draw the lines on our redistricting. And for folks that don't understand that, every 10 years after a census, it is the responsibility of the legislature to redraw the lines. And so the lines have been drawn, and specifically in Hillsborough, the congressional map, I'm not sure where it will end. The House draws a map, the Senate draws a map, and this time the governor, who's governor's never drawn a map before, this governor's decided to draw his own map for the congressional lines. But I say that we pay attention specifically in Tampa because I think that in a county that is really changed a lot in the last 10 years, and a county that is leans Democratic, they have managed to move Congresswoman Castor's seat from a +4 Democratic seat, plus 14, down to a +4. And anyone that follows politics knows that a +4 is a margin of error. So they've managed to make her seat vulnerable, is basically, after all the years that she served, that's what they're doing. And when she spoke up and said, there's some stuff going on here, the next thing you know, there's a giant billboard up, I think, was it on the interstate that called Congresswoman Castor a communist, which couldn't be anything further from the truth. But these are the kind of despicable and disgusting tactics that take place on a regular basis around here.
Our guest is State Senator Janet Cruz, a Democrat from Tampa. You're listening to Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. We're talking about the Florida legislative session. And Senator Cruz, I'm really glad that you started out with redistricting, because I think years from now, when we look back at this session, redistricting is going to be the thing that is the most impactful for years and years to come. It's funny that I'll say funny. It's funny that you mentioned Representative Castor's. Now we're talking about Kathy Castor, Representative Castor's districts having fewer Democrats in it. There's also a plan that does just the opposite. There's also a plan out there that completely packs lots and lots of Democrats into Kathy Castor's district, including some from across the bay from where she lives, including some from South St. Pete. And what the effect that would have would be to make the seat that Charlie Crist now holds, he's of course running for governor, that seat now would be heavily Republican. It would lean Republican. So it seems like that there's an effort to whittle away one of the Democratic Congress members' seats in the Tampa Bay area, and there's different ways that they might go about it.
They are very creative and strategic at the same time, I will tell you. And I know you remember, Sean, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but we went around this legislature that has been in Republican power for almost 26 years. And the citizens of Florida led a fair districts amendment that actually amended our Constitution and defined what a fair district would be. That was designed to try to reduce the gerrymandering that's gone on in the state for so many years. And we were successful. I mean, in 2012, I think there were 10 Democratic senators and 31 Republican senators. And now today there are 16 Democrats with the balance of the 40 as Republicans. So we made some movement there by challenging the Senate maps, taking them to court 10 years ago and making a difference. But now, any disputes go to the Supreme Court. And if you've watched what's happened there over the past 4 or 5 years, they have appointed Supremes that lean consistently more conservative. So I think that they feel quite comfortable that they have the courts in their favor too. So it's really sad that we would even have a discussion like that about someone appointed to the Florida Supreme Court that we couldn't trust to uphold the law. But those are the kind of conversations that we're having here. They truly are.
And one of the redistricting issues also affects the state legislature. For example, whether or not district boundaries can cross Tampa Bay. We talked about that with Congress, but it's also happening with the state legislature. Darrell Roussan's Senate district crosses boundaries, but they're talking about doing that. And I was watching some of the Florida legislature discussion of this the other day on the Florida channel, and they were really framing it as, they were calling it protecting the minority districts. And so, well, from what I've heard and read from Senator Roussan and from his constituents, they don't really like having someone they have to go to Tampa from St. Petersburg, or from St. Petersburg, from Tampa to go to St. Petersburg to be represented. They want to be represented by someone in their own city. Yet really, during the discussion in the Florida legislature, they were kind of framing it as that they were doing a service by, in their words, protecting this minority district by splitting the district like this. Any thoughts?
Again, Sean, like I say, we could argue this in the courts and let the judges decide, but we're not even certain that that we can get fair decisions there anymore. And it's very sad, but it's true. I mean, if you look at Senator Roussan's district, and what they've done is they just took a little piece of St. Pete and then jumped the bridge, is what I call it. They jumped the bridge over to Tampa. And we know that Tampa has enough population to create a minority seat that's safe and represented, but I don't understand any of that. I just don't understand it. I also don't understand why, with the explosive growth of the Puerto Rican Hispanic community in Orlando, everyone really kind of assumed that that would be the next congressional seat. And rather than draw a seat in the midst of the Hispanic district where the explosive growth is in Orlando, instead they moved that new seat kind of more centered toward the state, toward toward Lakeland and Tampa. I think with the hopes that it would be a seat that they could still capture in a bad, in a bad midterm. So we see lots of seats that are about a +4, which we know is the margin of error. This stuff is just not fair, Sean. This is not a fair district. This is not fair representation. And until we can start, remember, because our districts are gerrymandered, it's hard for us to move ahead, especially considering the 26 years of Republican rule. They not only do they own the majority, they own the majority of money that's contributed. So we have to fight as Democrats at least 3 times harder to make progress here. But that's what we continue to do. It's the only thing that we can do, is raise our voice in venues such as this one. And thank you for having me on, so that I do my best to try to teach people a little bit about what's going on. But to get to my point is, what they can't gerrymander is a statewide elected seat. It's that's not a gerrymandered seat. So until we can get ourselves a governor in the mansion that can veto the bad bills that come across his or her desk, or be able to control more of the budget, we're just going to see this stuff ramrodded through. I mean, they were the majority in the House, they're the majority in the Senate, and the governor is a Republican. So if we were going to focus on our best opportunity, it would be the governor's race, and try to put a Democrat in office there to stop some of this.
Our guest is State Senator Janet Cruz from Tampa. We're talking about the Florida legislative session and all sorts of Florida politics. So Senator Cruz, there are at least 3 high-profile Democrats running for governor. What do you think about that race?
I have tried to step back from any kind of endorsement. I think all 3 are great candidates. I serve with Senator Tadeo. I'm a good friend of Charlie Crist, and I love Nikki Fried. So I'm going to help all three of them and be ready the day after the primary or the evening of the primary to help whichever candidate is our choice.
Primary election is in August. Only registered Democrats or Republicans can vote in the respective primary elections. And then the winner of the primaries will all face in the general election, which is this November. We're going to be electing a governor, either re-electing Governor Ron DeSantis or electing a new governor this coming November. Well, let's turn back to the Florida legislature, and there have been some abortion bills that have been moving forward in the Florida legislature, and we'll set the context here. Of course, the state U.S. Supreme Court, that is considering a abortion ruling that some people say might even overturn Roe v. Wade, and then there's really restrictive statewide bills in Texas and so forth. Now Florida has a 15-week abortion ban. What are your thoughts on what's happening with abortion bills in the state of Florida?
It is rhetoric that doesn't meet reality here in the state, but that doesn't matter. You know, reality never mattered here. This is all about stirring up the base so that Republicans can get themselves out of their primaries. Those are the folks that they answer to, and this is what they respond to. You know, moving forward on a bill that says that you can't abort a pregnancy in cases of incest or rape is scary to me, very scary to me. And you know, let me just back up and say that abortion should be rare in any case. There are so many avenues available to us as women to avoid pregnancies. And, when it does happen, it should be the right of a woman, her family, and her God to make the decision whether she follows through or decides to take a pregnancy to term. But this is just a complete and utter attack on women's rights. I've seen it for the last 13 years that I've been here. Every single year, there's some kind of anti-abortion bill. They're just clipping off every vein and every artery, whether it's funding, whether it's a woman's right, whether it's threatening a doctor, whether it's telling an Uber driver that it would be his liability to turn in someone he drops off at a clinic. For a group of folks that speak to civil liberties, it's good for everyone except women, I guess.
I guess the state senator, Janet Cruz, a Democrat from Tampa, we're talking about the Florida legislative session. I got an email question from Paul who wants to know if you're aware of the SB 1024 bill on net metering. And Paul describes it as a bad bill pushed by Florida Power and Light lobbyists, which proposed to cut the rate paid for energy produced by businesses and home solar installations. He says it would reduce one of the few incentives for promoting solar in Florida. So how would you respond there to Paul?
I would say Paul is right. And I don't intend to support that bill. I think it's just gone too far. I think if we want people to be encouraged by alternate methods of energy, then we need to encourage solar and not discourage solar. It's expensive as it is. And the fact that you won't be able to net meter makes it worse. And I've met with several folks that are small business owners that install solar, and they said they will just be out of business. And understand that net metering doesn't mean that if you have additional energy, it doesn't go all the way back to the company and then back into the community. It goes probably your excess energy probably goes to your neighbor on one side or the other. It's pretty simplistic, actually. And we need to continue to support solar, and this is not a movement that continues to support solar. I hear you, Paul.
I want to ask you about the director of the Florida Department of Health in Orange County being placed on administrative leave recently. Dr. Raul Pino sent an email to all of his employees, and he's the director of health there, the director of the Florida Department of Health in Orange County. And he said, you know, it's really important that everybody get vaccinated and that all of our health employees get vaccinated. And his reward for that was getting suspended by the state. Your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that he's the leader of a major department, and I give him credit for knowing what he's talking about. And I personally do not think that he's wrong. You know, on a federal level, when they pushed for healthcare workers to be vaccinated, we have 98% compliance. Although, you know, those few percentage, those 2% that didn't get vaccinated went down kicking and screaming. But when we've seen mandates on a federal level, we see it work. You know, people aren't happy about it, but it works. And my mom has been in the hospital for almost 2 months, and I take great comfort in knowing that the healthcare workers that are surrounding her are vaccinated. I mean, if she contracted even the Omicron, I don't think she would survive.
Well, I want to see if we can squeeze in one last question from a listener. The Department of Education, recent Department of Education bid rigging scandal that was covered by the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald. Is there anything that you can talk about that? I mean, I'm reading the same thing that everyone else is reading. I haven't heard anything additional. I don't know. I think it's good work on behalf of the journalists that are continually bombarded negatively around here. And I think that we'll watch it play out, but I don't know any more than what I read. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming back on WMNF's Tuesday Cafe, Senator Cruz.
I don't want to go, Sean. I have so much more to tell you. Can I come back?
Yeah, we'll have you back for sure. This was a shorter interview than typical, so I will bring you back on and we'll talk more and more about the legislative session. But thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.
That was Florida Senator Janet Cruz. She's a Democrat from Tampa. I also want to thank my other guests, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor and Alzheimer's Foundation of America's Mr. Schneider. Thanks so much to Raina Lee Canis for helping out on the show. Also to Lamar Robinson. You have been listening to Tuesday Cafe with Sean Kinane. The show is every Tuesday morning at 10. And next Tuesday, we're going to hear about a new PBS documentary that examines prescription drug abuse and mental health. So I hope you tune in next Tuesday at 10. In this time slot tomorrow, Shelley will host Midpoint, and she's going to be talking about education and a lot of the new rules in Florida for teachers, and whether teachers are getting, or if Big Brother is watching teachers too much, among other topics in education. Next up, we have Wavemakers with Janet and Tom Scherberger. Their guest today is from the People's Council of St. Pete, and they'll talk more about the housing crisis. That's coming up after NPR headlines. You're listening to WMNF Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, and Lakeland. Thanks so much for listening and for supporting Community Radio WMNF Tampa.